bilateral meetings are really just a kind of getting to know you. And that was the same with our meeting. We spoke a little bit about regional issues, but mostly about the plans that I have for the state visit that I will be undertaking to China in first week of January. So whatever details need to be taken up between the Philippines and China will be taken up then.
This is all very good, and the Philippines will be playing a very key role in making sure that there is a balance, no, in terms of presence in the region.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Maricel Halili. The big story tonight.
President Bongbong Marcos and Chinese President Xi Jinping have reaffirmed their support for an early conclusion to the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea.
This was discussed during the leaders' bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Thailand. Shaila Francisco with the big story.
A very pleasant exchange. This was how President Bongbong Marcos described his first meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Bangkok, Thailand.
The bilateral meetings are really just a kind of getting to know you. And that was the same with our meeting. We spoke a little bit about regional issues, but mostly about the plans that I have for the state visit that I will be undertaking to China in first week of January.
Also included in the bilateral talks was House Deputy Speaker Gloria Arroyo.
He was also very surprised to meet his old friend. They had a few minutes of recollecting the meetings that they have had, which I think helped the tone of the meeting.
The Foreign Affairs Department, meanwhile, confirmed that the two leaders talked about the contested territory in the West Philippine Sea. In a statement, the DFA said that the two leaders have agreed that the relationship of the two countries should not be hindered due to maritime issues. Marcos Jr. and President Xi likewise expressed support in developing a code of conduct in the South China Sea. Moreover, the DFA said that Marcos Jr. said that he doesn't want his foreign policy to fall into the trap of a Cold War mindset. Meanwhile, on the side of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, it says friendly consultation must remain between two countries. The ministry added that the Philippines and China should work together against any kind of bullying and maintain peace and stability in the region. Aside from talks regarding the West Philippine Sea, strengthening relationships between the two countries was also discussed. Among the projects to be focused on by the two administrations is China's Belt and Road Initiative and the Philippines Build, Build, Build program. Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
And still on the APEC summit, President Marcos called for improved economic cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region as he warned of dark clouds such as food security and climate change. In his speech at the 2022 APEC CEO summit, Marcos Jr. noted a significant growth in the region as well as economic miracles that are now being threatened by pandemic aftershocks. The president called for collaboration and cooperation in the region to address structural and policy issues and avoid headwinds moving forward. Among the issues raised by President Marcos were food security, global health systems, and climate change.
Dark clouds loom large if we are not to be prepared. They loom on the economic horizon, and now more than ever, our governments and economies must work closer and better together as partners.
Energy advocates have criticized the pronouncements of President Bongbong Marcos on the country's energy plans, as well as the participation of the Philippine delegation to the COP27 Climate Summit. At the APEC CEO Summit in Thailand, Marcos Jr. reiterated the government's target of increasing the share of renewable energy in the power generation mix to 35% by 2030 and to 50% by 2040. But for think tank Climate Analytics, in order for the Philippines to reach its goal of keeping global temperature rise to no more than or not more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, It must raise the share of renewables in the power mix to 80 to 83% by 2030 toward a full transition by 2040. The Power for People Coalition, meanwhile, criticized the Philippine delegation at COP27 climate summit in Egypt over its supposed silence on the urgency of an energy transition.
Here to give us their thoughts on President Marcos' recent pronouncements during the 29th APEC summit, we have with us live via Zoom Aksyon Klima Pilipinas convener Rodney Galicha. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story, sir.
Hi, good evening and good afternoon here from Egypt, Robbie and Marcel. And we're excited to share some updates coming directly from COP27 here at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt.
Okay, magandang araw po sa inyo. Sabi po ni President Marcos, 35% renewable energy by 2030, 50% by 2040. Not enough? What do you think?
It's not enough, actually, because we have so many indigenous sources of renewable energy. And as we all know, the government calls also for a transition. And they thought that transition energy would be natural gas or fossil gas. And we hope that if it is indeed, we need to have some definite timelines, because we cannot wait for a drastic transition to 100% renewable energy. We all know as well that there is a pending proposal to develop more wind energy, and that is offshore wind energy. And we hope that it will be factored in the mix of our energy sources.
Sir, what do you think of the statement of President Bongbong Marcos calling out global leaders to act on climate change?
Of course, every leader in the world is calling for action on climate change. The biggest challenge, however, is that there are many developed nations hindering genuine climate actions. Climate action is not only limited to mitigation, which is the reduction or removal or avoidance of greenhouse gases. It is also actually talking about adaptation and finance and technology transfer. Right now here at COP27, there is this a group negotiating bloc we call G77 with China, which is actually proposing funding for loss and damages. So as I have said, it's not only about mitigation, adaptation, among others. It's also asking larger nations, developed nations, to pay up for the damages and losses that the climate crisis brought. Many damages that the climate impacts. It exacerbated actually the massive destruction of our lives and livelihoods in the country. So the call is actually, on top of the reduction, avoidance, and reduction, is the loss and damage finance facility. And it has been proposed actually, and we are still hoping that it will be decided upon by the plenary as of now. On top of that, there's also what we call the Santiago Network. Santiago Network for loss and damage is actually, it was established to network, to connect developing vulnerable countries or nations like the Philippines with those who provide technical assistance, knowledge, and resources. But the function is still to be operationalized right now. And we hope that it will be again decided upon by the plenary led by the presidency of Egypt here. And this is crunch time already here at COP27. This is the last day actually of the conference of parties. And we hope that loss and damage will actually be on the table, on the agenda, the facility, and even the operationalization of the fund.
And as you mentioned, you are in Egypt for COP27. How is our Philippine delegation positioning, and how do you appreciate, if at all, the positioning and the statements of the Philippine delegation in Egypt?
The Philippine delegation actually is doing its best, and it's championing loss and damage facility and even finance facility, and even calling for the establishment of fund. the Philippine delegation is always aligned with the positions of the G77 plus China. And as I have said, the Philippines is also championing to put and to actually operationalize in some ways or the other emissions avoidance. But we need to actually understand more about this text, about this context or concept that has been included in the text. Again, as I have said, loss and damage is part and parcel of the position of the Philippines, and it is very, very aligned to the position of the most vulnerable, specifically of the developing countries.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Action Klima Pilipinas Convener Rodney Galicha. After the break, we will be discussing the approved water rate hikes in Metro Manila for 2023 with Jennifer Rufo, Corporate Communications Head of Maynilad. That when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're watching the big story here on One News. Aside from higher prices of food and electricity, Metro Manila residents will also be dealing with higher water rates. The MWSS has approved staggered water rate hikes for both Maynilad and Manila Water starting next year. Camille Samonte with a report.
Instead of celebrating a Happy New Year, Metro Manila residents will have to tighten their belts as they usher in 2023. This as Manila Water and Maynilad are expected to hike rates in January. The rate increase was approved by the Metropolitan Water Works and Sewerage System or MWSS, and implementation will be on a staggered basis. Manila Water will increase their rates by 8 pesos and 4 centavos per cubic meter. This means that households consuming 10 to 30 cubic meters of water every month may see their bills jump to about about 193 pesos, up to 866 pesos. Meanwhile, Maynilad will implement a rate hike of 3 pesos and 29 centavos per cubic meter in January. This means that consumers could see their bills rise to around 136 pesos up to over 8,000 pesos, depending on their consumption. For Carolina, the increase in water rates would mean they have to further tighten their belts.
Dagdag sa expenses. Tipid-tipid na lang.
The owner of this water refilling station meanwhile says they might be forced to raise prices too.
Magtataas din po ng presyo kasi mahal yung tubig eh.
But this car wash owner says that despite the water rate hike, they still won't be hiking the prices of their services next year due to fear of losing their patrons.
Parang wala rin, kaya hindi na tinatasan yung bayad dito eh. Pag dinasan, wala na kami customer.
While there are those who don't really mind the expected rise in water rates,
wala akong pagpipilian ho eh. Gagamit pa rin po.
water rate hikes though will not stop in 2023. This is just the first of a series of rate adjustments that will be implemented until 2027. For Manila Water, the 2023 increase will be followed by a 5 peso hike in 2024, 3 pesos and 25 centavos in 2025, 3 pesos in 2026, and 1 pesos and 8 centavos in 2027. Maynilad will meanwhile implement a 6 peso and 26 centavo rate hike in 2024 and a 2 peso and 12 centavo hike in 2025. If there is no new water source, rates will rise by 84 centavos in 2026 and 80 centavos in 2027. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
To give us more details about the scheduled rate hikes, we have with us on the line Jennifer Rufo, Corporate Communications Head from Maynilad. Good evening, Ms. Rufo. Welcome to the big story.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Galicha.
Ma'am, maybe explain to us first, how do we come up with the figures, the rate adjustments?
Okay. Every 5 years, we have to go through what we call a rate rebasing exercise. In this exercise, the MWSS Regulatory Office essentially receives a submission from the concessionaires, a business plan. This business plan details the projects that we have to do in the next 5 years in order to sustain service level enhancements. And at the same time, the amount of investment that we will need to spend to get those projects implemented. So all of these are reviewed by the regulator, and they check the projects that we propose for prudency and efficiency. The intent of the regulator really is to balance the requirement between having to spend for projects needed to improve services, and at the same time ensure that the impact on the tariff will not be too high for customers.
So it will be used for improvement of services.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
In Maynilad's case, we really have to increase the tariff already by next year because we have already deferred increases in the past 3 years out of consideration for our customers because of what happened during the pandemic. So we've agreed to defer it, but now we really have to increase the rates because of the higher input costs for producing water.
Ms. Rufo, I mean, kanina binanggit natin, this is going to be staggered or spread out over the next five years. People are still trying to focus on what's going to happen in 2023. But just to remind, there will be rate hikes in 2024, 25, 26, and then if I heard that right, if there is no new water source, baka pati sa 2027. Could we fast forward there? I mean, what about this water source? What about the new water source being developed that hopefully are online? What can we project about that?
Ganito siya, no, Robbie? Kasi every 5 years talaga, typically, one time, big time ang increase ng water tariff. But what we did was we agreed to stagger. That way, hindi masyado mabigat sa consumers. So in our case, in the first tranche, 2023, we agreed to just increase using via inflation adjustment lang. And then the succeeding tranches are contingent on actual service level improvements. So that will be reviewed again by our regulators. On the water source, that is right. We have different projections as to the cost of the tariff depending on the availability of a water source. This is actually the Kaliwa Dam project of the government. So if it appears that it will actually push through as planned, then we will have to spend for the necessary conveyance systems, the necessary treatment plants. And that's the reason why there's a different rate for a certain period of time.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was Jennifer Rufo, Maynilad's Corporate Communications Head. And still to come, RIP Twitter trends on the same platform following the resignation of hundreds of the social media's employees. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
This is the beginning of the end of the war. Of course, you see our strong army. We are step by step coming to our country, to all the temporary occupied territories, and of course it's a pity, but it's a long way, difficult way, because this war took the best heroes of our country, and so but for us it's very understandable. We don't believe Russia, yes, and they are tricking with all the world. That's why we are going forward. We're ready for peace, but our peace for our country is all our country, all our territory. We respect the law and respect sovereignty of all the countries, but now we are speaking about our countries. That's why we are fighting against Russian aggression. The HIMARS, you know, that is high level of the weapon what we have from our partners, and we are really thankful for Joe Biden and for Congress and for all support. Not only USA, you understand that all Europe help us too very much, so thank you very much. All this victory is possible when all the world is around Ukraine, around our country. So thank you again.
Sustainability, resilience, and security. So many big global issues that today's leaders are facing. We're here in Singapore for the New Economy Forum to talk through some of these issues and try to come up with some solutions.
First and foremost at the top of the list is the cost of food and energy globally. How on earth do we bring that down? Is there a way to relieve the pressure that countries in the emerging markets feel because the currencies are so weak against the US dollar and it costs them that much more to buy food and energy that's in short supply? Number two, I would say, is the rising tension level between the United States and China. And how is that going to play out regionally? How is that going to play out in terms of security? We know that there's this existential question hanging over Taiwan.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. First, woman U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will be stepping down as Democratic leader. Pelosi made the announcement on Thursday after the GOP secured a narrow victory in the midterm elections. In her speech, Pelosi declared that it's time for the new generation of Democrats to lead the party. But Pelosi maintained that she will remain in Congress as San Francisco representative. House Democrats are set to vote on their leaders on November 30. Meanwhile, hashtag RIP Twitter is currently trending worldwide on the site. This comes after hundreds of the social media's employees opted to resign following Elon Musk's ultimatum telling workers to sign up for long hours at high intensity or leave. Musk also shut down Twitter offices all over the United States after the mass resignation. For his part, Musk tweeted that the platform is currently seeing an all-time high in usage. Musk also posted a meme mocking the RIP Twitter hashtag.
As the world celebrates World Vasectomy Day, more and more men are choosing to have the procedure to prevent unwanted pregnancies. Mobile journalist Kyla Macantan has the story.
With the world population now officially at 8 billion, vasectomy is becoming a more popular method of permanent contraception for men. For JC and his wife Jem, their 2 kids are more than enough. They also want to stop using birth control pills. So JC decided to have a vasectomy. Just like ligation for women, in vasectomy, the man's vas deferens, or the tube where semen passes through, is cut and sealed. JC opted for NSV, or no scalpel vasectomy.
Tapos, yung feeling niya po para lang po kayong sinircumcise o tinuli lang. Tinuli. Parang ganun yung feeling sa amin. Hindi po siya masakit. Hindi po siya masakit kasi may anesthesia siya. So, buti po nang naidulot sa amin ng vasectomy kasi mas napag-igihan po namin yung mga plano namin sa buhay.
Like JC, Alan witnessed his wife Jen's struggles during her pregnancy. He added that this and the ever-increasing cost of living prompted him to get a vasectomy. Alan chose to undergo a conventional vasectomy, a procedure that lasts for around 2 hours. He claims post-surgery pain only lasted a few hours. A monthly semen analysis is required after the procedure. It's been 2 years since his procedure, yet some people are still giving out unsolicited opinions.
Hindi pa rin nila maintindihan bakit ginawa ko yun. Parang sa side nila, sayang daw. Sabi ko, anong sayang? Kasi ang hirap ng buhay.
Gusto ko lang mag-thank you sa kanya, syempre, dahil nag-sacrifice din siya eh. Kasi bihira talaga yung mga husband na papayag.
JC and Alan both did not shell out any cash for their procedures. They just went to the Commission on Population and Development, or POPCOM, which provides free ligation and vasectomy services. Still, it's recommended to consult a doctor first to know which method of contraception is best on a case-to-case basis. Mobile journalist Kyla Macantan, We Are One News.
And it's a good reminder that, when it comes to reproductive health, when it comes to responsibility for the family, when it comes to public health, the men have to play their part as well.
Yes, of course. Malaki daw yung population natin, 8 billion na worldwide. Pero meron tayong pagbaba ng fertility rate. So I'm not sure. Well, of course, at least there's an option for family planning.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. I'm Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Maricel Halili. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.